times.
Coach, just what was your biggest takeaway from watching the film of the Missouri game?
Again, I thought our guards did not do a great job of what we wanted defensively. But, again, I don't want to take away anything from Missouri because I thought their guards were terrific, made shots, drove the ball well, made some great layups. And I love big-time layup makers, and they made a couple great. Pinson was terrific, played as well against us as anybody that we played all year. I thought on the offensive end, and it's my fault, we settled getting into ball screens way too much, and that's not who we are and what we want to do. But I did like the fact that we got aggressive shooting the ball from the three. We got guys that we know that can make shots, but the biggest thing, Rob, they got to take shots so we don't continue to put pressure on one or two guys to score the ball. And but the fact is we got to get back to who I think that we should be as a team, and that means we've got to keep going into the bench to figure that out. We're going to have to do it.
Rick, you're 0-3 with that Jaden Springer in the lineup. How valuable is he to your team?
Well, I think he's valuable, Jimmy, in the fact that, he brings, he can penetrate. He handles the ball. He's another quality guard. And a player that defensively does guard normally and does the things that we want done. It gives us more depth. So there's no doubt that, he helps. But we should be able to overcome that. I really appreciate the fact that, Santi, wasn't at his best the other night, but he struggled through it. He had a little bit of a hip pointer he was dealing with, but he fought it as much as he could. And other guys, they made the effort. I also think that when you get a little bit doubt creeps in a little bit, I think it can freeze you up mentally and physically. And I think that has happened a little bit the last two games, or maybe more than a little bit. But I just know this: we've got a chance to be a really good basketball team, and teams go through it at different times throughout the year, unless it's one of those special years where it just clicks from start to finish. But we just got to continue to get back to playing the kind of basketball that I know and we know that we're capable of.
And what is the update on Santiago Vescovi and Springer? What's their update?
I haven't gotten my report today, but Santi leaving last night. He said it's fine. Jaden looked like he was doing better, but we'll see today when we're getting ready. When we finish up here, we'll be heading into practice.
Grant, then David Pascal.
With Jaden, how do you treat an injury differently
I can't hear.
after it's popped up and then?
We're going to have to skip to David. Grant, we can't hear you well.
Rick, I wanted to ask about tomorrow night's matchup. When you think about Eve and Abdul Adu, they've been in this league blocking shots for forever. Can you just talk about that as an art? And I didn't know if, because that's the first thing I think of when I think of those two is their ability to shot block. But I didn't know if that becomes like game managers and, quarterbacks becoming game managers. I know that's kind of an insult to some, but, they're known for blocking shots, both of them.
Well, I think it's a good thing to be known for too. When you get a guy that does that, it's a talent, and it's someone that wants to do it, and it's a game changer when you got a guy that can fix-it plays and can do that. But they both, I do think, take and do it two different ways. Adu is a long, athletic. Eve is long, but not that long. But tremendous jumping ability and timing But it's a great thing to have, and it's obviously something people love to see when a guy goes up there and can swat something away at the rim when you think you've got something easy. But both of them should be commended on the fact that they take great pride in doing it.
Also wanted to ask you something real quick about Saturday. Because so many non-conference games had to be shelved because of COVID, how much more importance will this Big 12 SEC Challenge have as far as NCAA seeding and teams? The ability just to kind of impact the national perception given what we lost in November.
Well, again, I don't know if it has to do with a lot with obviously you're going outside the league. I don't know how much it'll have a bearing on what's going to happen with the NCAA tournament, even though you think every game you play has a bearing on the NCAA tournament. From a perception-wise, I think that people know that there's good teams in both leagues regardless of what happens. I think right now everybody really and honestly are more concerned about what we saw happen at Michigan today, where they're closed, shut down for 2 weeks. I think that's where the concern is, where every time you go out, you've got to take advantage of it and play, because who knows how long could that happen somewhere within your program or somewhere else within the league. And I think there will be a lot more discussion as time goes on about postseason tournaments, those type things. But the fact is, if we can get as many teams as we can to the 2022 mark game total, will probably give the NCAA what they need in some ways. But as you know, some teams had no preseason. They're going to play a minimum games of 13. Yes. But I know what you're asking about the perception of it. I don't think the NCAA tournament works off perception. I think they, in terms of leagues, this, that, I think they look at what they think is quality basketball teams, and that's where their decisions come from.
Coach, we've noticed over the last few weeks, Grant Ramey really struggles with technology, but he's texted me his question. He wants to know if you're more cautious with a player after an injury has happened twice, like it has with Jaden. And I think he's referencing the fact that he hurt his ankle initially in the Alabama game.
Yeah, you're always cautious with your players. You don't ever want your players to play injured. And as a coach, you can tell when things aren't right because you're around them so much. And our number one thing is we're going to protect our players at all costs. If it means them not playing, they're not going to play. And every player is different. I think all players can, their pain tolerance, pain level is different. But when someone that can't move, that needs to be able to move, can't move, those are easy decisions. They really are. And we know Jaden wants to play, and he's doing everything that we're asking him to do from his rehab. And he was out the other day, and he actually was getting ready to play the game Saturday, but he was on the floor very short time, and you could tell he tweaked it. And that's tough when you've put all that time into rehab and you want to play, and then you go out thinking, okay, I'm ready to do this. And then it's just still tender, and it's tough. But the number one thing we're always going to do is protect our players.
Mike Wilson, then Ben McKee.
Yeah, I don't struggle with technology despite being the same age as Grant Ramey. Rick, who do you see stepping up to speak and lead this team when things aren't going well in games? And who would you like to see speak up more?
Well, first of all, I don't think Grant pays his bill for his internet. It's probably the reason that he is having difficulties. I mean, he should be doing that, obviously, but he's not. But, Mike, to answer your question, after an observation there of Grant, I would say this, that we still believe that John Fulkerson is a guy that can do some things. We all have confidence in Santi trying to, making the right play, because he really does do that. But we also know that Fulky has got to make the adjustments that he needs to make throughout the game in terms of how people are guarding him, where he can do what he needs to do. And so with that said, as a team, we're at our best when we have great balance. And we talked about with our team yesterday, we don't want to get in a situation with our team where you don't know from game to game who's going to be consistent. We don't want to have to say, okay, we're going to have to play the hot hand. This guy's playing, we play him. You want consistency, because that helps everyone. It helps the guys that come into the game, but your frontline guys, your starters that start, you do want to see consistency out of those guys. Then obviously when you go to the bench, you want to see it. But when you don't get consistency, it really, the game time, game situation depends on what you might do at that point in time, just based on what has happened up to that point throughout the game.
Coach, how would you assess the play of Josiah the last couple of games? Is he where you would like him to be, or what steps would you like to see him take?
Well, the last game, he finally did the things that we told him. When he's open, he's got to shoot the ball. He turns down too many shots, and which inevitably puts us in a situation where normally something good doesn't happen, where the floor is not balanced. Guys ready to rebound, they don't. Passes are made to guys in tough situations where they're almost locked up in jail before they know what's hit them. And last game he did do that. he really had been doing a terrific job on the glass. He's got to get back to doing that more consistently because at one time he was the best rebounder we had on the team. And so with that said, what we need from him as much as anything is to take open shots and do it consistently. He'll continue to do all the other stuff he needs to do to continue to grow as a player.
Nicholas Hill and Jimmy Himes.
Coach, Devonte Gaines had a much larger role last week in 2 games. How would you evaluate his performance last week, and do you see him maintaining an increased role in the rotation moving forward?
You say it again. I didn't hear his first part. Did you say Devonte? Is that what you said?
Yes. Yes.
You know what he does. You know what he does is what you see. He's going to do. He's going to play hard. He's going to go in there and rebound the basketball. He's going to make it. He is going to do that regardless of his build. He's not afraid to throw himself around to do that. And what we're doing with him, and it goes back. We're again consistency. I mean, he is a consistent player. I think the more. And again, if Jaden's available to play, how much would he play? I don't know that answer to that other than the way we had played at Florida. I felt like he needed to have a chance to play because I just didn't feel like we got the kind of competitive fire that we needed there. I thought the other night against Missouri, it was better from that standpoint, but he had earned the right based on what he had done in practice and games to have a chance to go out and do that. And I would say the same thing about Drew Pember, but now – you do it in practice, you get a shot in the game, you better do the same things that you had done to get you on the floor. And because I've said many times there's a big difference in being a guy that can get things done in practice and a guy that can get things done in the game.
Jimmy, then Rob Lewis.
How comforting was it to see Pons hitting those 3-point shots?
Well, I just like the fact he shot it. And again, I think he's still got to get to where he's not as hesitant. He's got to shoot his shots, and he looked to be a little bit more aggressive driving the ball too. But if you knew how much time he puts in, Jimmy, and I've seen many players go through slumps where they just can't seem to make one. You go back a year ago, Jordan Bowden struggled all year, and you think about how much the time he put in. But guys get mental? There's no doubt. There's no way you can deny that. But fact is, it goes back to what I just said about Josiah James. For the flow of the game, for the flow of your team, when you're open and your teammates are expecting you to shoot the ball, you got to shoot it. And are you going to be open when you're shooting a low percentage? Coaches are going to say, hey, he's got to make one. We're not going to guard him. But you saw as the game went on, after he had made a couple of them, they start creeping out there. And so the fact that, one, we know he can make them. And I felt all along at some point in time he would start making some shots.
Also, do you feel like you need to get more consistent inside scoring?
Yes, and can't be just John Fulkerson. I mean, inside scoring can be layups. Like think about it, we showed VJ yesterday. He had 2 layups yesterday at the rim that he really wasn't challenged on, and he made them much more difficult than he had to. So it can be posting guards, it can be posting post players, it can be driving the ball, get to the rim, play off 2 feet, all kind of ways that you can count inside scoring. And so we don't need to just think throwing it to one guy and standing around watching him play in the post is what that's about. We need everybody, again, playing to the high percentage areas on the floor that we want to play to.
Coach, when you're scouting Mississippi State, just, what are a couple the big things that jump out at you that you got to worry about?
Well, they're guards. I mean, we just had 2 guards that lit us up for 28 and 18. They've got 2 starting guards that can very well do that. Have a very aggressive player inside in the post. They rebound the ball. Very physical team. And, Ben's teams have always been solid both ways. And so we think it'll be a physical type basketball game, which most of them are, but with the way they really work hard at, again, talking about working the high percentage areas, they do it as well as anybody.
Gustavo, then Ben McKee.
Coach, how important it is to this moment of the season to have a back-to-back home games, to get back in the winning call? How important is to have this back-to-back home games?
The importance of having a little home stretch here.
Well, I think that's where your schedule works out. You'll have some back-to-back games, and you'll have some back-to-back road games. But regardless of what it is, I do think that this year it's different playing at home or on the road. It's not quite the same. I mean, as it is normally been in the past. So I'm not sure how much. If there's ever been a year where they're somewhat equal, I would say it's this year, because we do know that some home arenas are great advantages for teams. But right now, whether we're home or away, it all gets back. You got to play good basketball. You got to play solid, good basketball. Got to get consistent. You got to know what you're going to get night in and out, night out from certain guys, and obviously as many as you can. And you hope you're as healthy as you can be. And if not, you hope someone else can step in and you don't miss a beat, which is sometimes hard to do. But with that said, it's all about just being, you can't turn the ball over 18 times back-to-back games. You can't do that. That has nothing to do with being home or on the road, because if it had anything to do with that, we wouldn't have turned it over 18 times here Saturday. And so it goes back to playing good basketball.
Coach, you talk about Josiah being your best rebounder at one point. You also talk about Devonte and his ability to rebound. Does it concern you at all that those two may be your best rebounders, given that they're not traditional post players?
Well, yeah, I'd like to see, like I said, I think John Fulkerson is averaging like 12 points, 6 rebounds. It'd be great if he were 12 points, 8 rebounds. Eve is averaging, 6 rebounds maybe?
5 point something.
5 something. Yeah, if those two guys were back both at 8, that's where you'd want that. But they also, you have to realize they're playing night in and night out against guys bigger. And so sometimes their job is to block out, and you expect your guards to come down and clean things up. So because they really do have to block out, and they're going to have to do it most of the time in tight quarters, where sometimes the person they're guarding is, both of them are standing on the blocker inside, and shots come from the outside, and it's hard for that inside guy to get the leverage that he needs, especially when the ball is going to come off the rim quick. And that's why your guards are so important. So I don't think it's unusual if you got good rebounding guards. That's when you get better. I can tell you that if they come down and clean it up, because it is hard for those post guys inside with it's like being on the offensive defensive line. They say hut, and you got about 4 or 5 inches there, and there's contact, and that's what it's like for those guys when a shot goes up in there.
Teresa and Jimmy Himes.
Rick, you mentioned your team struggles, the turnovers. Alabama's at the top of the league, followed by Missouri, LSU. You're struggling. Kentucky's had its struggles. How much of this is maybe just unusual teams maybe stepping up in the SEC? There seems to be an outside perception that the SEC is back to being bad again and back to its basketball struggles. How accurate are those outside perceptions?
I don't think they're accurate. Again, it goes back to what I was talking earlier about the NCAA tournament. I don't think they base anything on perception. I think they look at teams, and you watch teams. If you watch Missouri play the other night, I don't think anybody in the country would say they're a bad team. And I think they would look and say they're a really good team. I mean, they saw them beat a good team too. I mean, were we at our best? No, they had something to do with it, absolutely. But you can't tell me that there's anybody in the country, in the ACC, the Big East, the Pac-12, that would look forward to playing Missouri or Alabama or LSU, you name it, okay? So the fact is, when you're in a league, when there's balance, I think it's great myself. But what happens when there's balance in the league is exactly what you said. The perception is that it's not very good, because you expect, like at the ACC right now, because Duke, where are they in the league? North Carolina. Does that mean the ACC is not any good this year? And it's because 2 teams. And what happens is, as time goes on, if you got a great league, the coaches in the league, they're fighting to get up there. They're fighting to get there. Now, do you expect Kentucky, Carolina, and Duke to be good every year? Absolutely, you do. Do you expect Michigan State every year? Absolutely. UCLA, absolutely, because they've done it for a long period of time. But I think that's where we are in college athletics today, especially because of this transfer rule. There's going to be a lot of teams that can get good quick and overnight. Missouri's the oldest team in our league. And I thought they played like it. I think they're playing like a group of guys that say, hey, you know what? We've got a chance to go to the postseason play, the NCAA tournament. This is our last go around. Maybe we're going to go get it. And I think that's Jeremiah Tillman had one of the great quotes. Somebody asked him after one of their losses, what can you learn in a loss? And I think he said something like, we're too old to learn something from a loss. We shouldn't be losing. I think that's a great quote, because when older teams get there, you don't need to lose. We don't need to lose games. I mean, that goes back to people thinking that you got to lose a game, this or that. I do know this: we're still dealing with kids. I do know that, and I know that. Can there be distractions? Can they get caught up in this, that? Absolutely, they can. But that's part of coaching, that you have a pulse on your team, that you're making sure in some way, somehow. Like we told our team, the last two teams that beaten us, we had beaten 4 times in a row. I've got enough respect for Mike White and enough respect for Conzo Martin to know that, hey, they're saying, hey, man, when's enough? When's enough? You know, you guys going to keep letting these guys beat you? So that part of it comes in. And so, and our guys right now, they weren't part of all those 4 wins in a row, but they've been a part. Fulky and those guys were, and some of these younger guys, first time they played Missouri, first time they played Florida, they don't feel that yet. But coaches do. Coaches have a lot longer memory than players. Players have short memories. Coaches don't. So coaches are going to bring those type things up. So when we talk about a perception in the middle of January, I think you're right. I mean, everybody thinks that, but I've never believed that. I never have. I remember at Texas when we were playing Tennessee years ago, and they came in, and I know this getting ready for the game. I had great respect watching Tennessee on tape that day and getting our players, but I don't think players think like that. I mean, I know they don't. I'm going to say this to you too. I don't know if they always have the kind of respect, especially young players should, for older players that they've never heard of. That happens sometimes, and sometimes that's where it does take them getting beat a little bit to realize, hey man, there's a lot of guys can play this game that I don't even know about. But on the outside, again, I don't think people that are dealing with basketball and really know the game. I don't know how you can not look at Missouri the other night and Florida and say, hey, those are really good basketball teams. And even Tennessee, who's supposed to win the game, you know, they didn't play great, but I could go back and sit down and show you the tape when we were still in striking distance in the game and could have done something with it, as bad as we played, which tells me, you know, the old saying at coach, you're never as good as you think you are, and you're never as bad as you think you are.
We'll finish up with Jimmy Himes.
Rick, you mentioned the need to be more consistent, and I wonder if you thought with some of the veterans on the team you would be a more consistent team, or does that just go with trying to integrate some younger players into the lineup?
You know, Jimmy, I think that when you talk about that, I think you got to take into consideration that going into the year, the older guys you're talking about were thrust into a situation where, like, everybody thinks they're going to dominate just because. You go back to last year, we lost 14 games. We lost 14 games with pretty much the same group of guys. We had John Fulkerson and E. Pons, who played really well at the end of the year. We beat Florida. We beat Kentucky. And Florida was a team last year that was picked to be a top 5 team at the start of the season. And so when you build a little bit of momentum like that at the end of the year, you got the majority of the team back. You have a nice recruiting class. I can see, again, from perception that people are going to write, hey, these guys have a chance to be really, really good. That's why I tell you guys every year, I don't think preseason rankings and all that mean a whole lot, because I knew this, that John Fulkerson and E. Pond would now be thrust into a whole different role. So it's going to be new for them, where now people really are expecting great things from them, and how can they handle it? And if you don't think that they feel that pressure for the first time in their life, in their seniors, you're mistaken. They do, and they feel it, and they're like, they don't want to let anybody down. And these two guys, they work as hard as you could possibly ask somebody to work. And then you're going to bring in some guys who have never done it, who thinks they're supposed to come in and it's going to be easy, which is never easy, but they don't know any better. And so you got every year, regardless of the consistency that you think you're going to have, you got to look around. And I've always said this: if you're not getting better, you're getting worse. And I know we're a much better team than we were a year ago, but I also know that we've got guys that put undue pressure on themselves because of they don't want to let them especially don't want to let their teammates down. But that's part of the growth process. And so coming into this year, I didn't think it was going to be smooth sailing all the way through. I didn't. Like every coach, I wish we'd have had those other 7 games or whatever we missed and go through it. You learn some of that, and it would have helped. Now we're doing it in conference play, and we're going to keep growing. And but I have a lot of confidence in these guys. Those are the things, Jimmy, that going in the locker room after games, there's a lot of dialogue in the game after a game when you go in and scrub out games, things that people would not know. And this is not being critical of anyone. It's just things that you would not know unless you're living it every single day and what we all expect from each other. And what happens is when you set high expectations on each other, the players on the coaches, coaches on the players, and things aren't going well, there's a lot that can come out. But the bottom line is when it comes out, you really realize what your team's made out of. And that's why I love these guys. They want to get better. They know they've got to get better. And I expect us to get better.
And also, is there an update on Corey Walker? How's he progressing?
Okay, the same thing. You know, Corey missed a lot of basketball at a time when it's hard to miss it and make up, because now you think about it, he missed a lot, and now we're in the games. And so, I mean, he's still behind in areas of knowing what we need him to know in terms of our offensive schemes and defensive schemes. And it's hard to catch up because we're only really getting one good day of practice right now because we're nursing injuries, fatigue, all the things we have to do this time of year. And so when you lose those dates, those practices at that time, it's really, really hard to make it up.
All right. Thank you, Coach.
Right. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank
Jimmy,
you.
if you could maybe pour into Grant a little bit and give him some technology tips, I think that'd help all of us.